Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so glad you're here today because, well, we've got a seriously fascinating topic lined up. We're going to look at how four wildly different stories, we're talking ancient epics, Arthurian legend, Japanese cinema, and European fairy tales, how they all actually explore the exact same mechanism of human transformation. They just do it through totally different thematic prisms. So let's dive right in and look at the hidden wiring beneath the stories that have literally shaped our world.
Okay, let's dive into this. What could a battle-hardened Greek king and a girl sweeping cinders possibly have in common? On the surface, absolutely nothing. But structurally, practically everything that matters. Today we're unpacking the underlying crucible of human adaptation. And as you'll see, this core transformative experience is incredibly, undeniably universal.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll hit the anatomy of transformation, then spiritual and martial quests. Third is the stationary crucible. Fourth is the feminine social journey, and we'll wrap up with the unifying human truth. Don't worry, we're going to deconstruct these disconnected stories in a very structured, deliberate way.
All right, Section 1, the anatomy of transformation.
Before we go any further, we need to lock down a critical piece of vocabulary from Joseph Campbell's framework, and that is the boon. You see, the hero's journey isn't just about going on some fun adventure. It is ultimately about retrieving this boon, which might be a physical prize or just a really profound internal realization, all to heal a dying or mundane world. Keep this concept in mind, because whether it's a mythical cup or, just finding your footing in a new job, retrieving that boon is the ultimate destination for every single journey we're about to discuss.
Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds in spiritual and martial quests.
So Percival's story is basically your quintessential spiritual healing journey. He starts out as this completely naive, sheltered boy in the woods. He's so innocent that when he first sees knights, he literally mistakes them for angels. But his deepest ordeal, his ultimate abyss, the absolute lowest point of his journey, happens later at the Grail Castle. He sees the wounded Fisher King, the bleeding lance, and the Holy Grail itself. But a mentor had told him earlier, hey, polite knights don't ask too many questions. So prioritizing basic dinner party etiquette over natural empathy while staring at a severely wounded man, Percival just stays completely silent. And because of this massive failure, the Fisher King goes unhealed and the entire land withers into a barren wasteland.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the resolution. Percival is forced to wander for years, eventually realizing that the strict, superficial rules of high society simply aren't enough. He has to develop a true, internal spiritual compass. His real return and the ultimate healing of the world only happens when he abandons those rigid rules and finally asks this incredibly empathetic question: whom does the Grail serve? His journey is a total transformation from blind obedience to conscious, active empathy.
All right, now let's flip over to a martial quest. If the famous epic, the Iliad, is all about the raw, destructive power of youthful ego and rage, its sequel, the Odyssey, is about the painful stripping away of that exact same ego. Odysseus leaves Troy as a hubristic conqueror, and when he blinds the Cyclops, he makes the classic arrogant young man's mistake. He yells out his real name as he escapes, just so he can get all the credit and the glory.
10. Think about that number for a second. We've all sent a text or an email out of anger that we instantly regretted, right? Well, this single act of arrogance cost Odysseus a full decade. Because he yelled his name, the Cyclops knows exactly who to curse. Poseidon hears it and triggers an agonizing, brutal 10-year detour. A whole decade of suffering, all because he couldn't keep his massive ego in check.
But the crucial point is his ultimate transformation, which we see by the time he finally lands back on the shores of Ithaca. Instead of storming his palace with his sword drawn and his chest puffed out, he disguises himself as a frail, abused beggar. He literally lets the suitors who are occupying his home mock him, throw things at him, humiliate him. He successfully integrated the savage violence of his past with extreme, calculated patience. He doesn't just win back his house, he surgically cleanses it to restore the cosmic order of his kingdom. He has truly, finally, become the master of his ego.
Moving right along to Section 3, the stationary crucible.
Now let's look at Akira Kurosawa's masterpiece, Seven Samurai, because it flips Campbell's model completely on its head. Instead of the hero leaving home to venture out into the great unknown, the exact opposite happens. The unknown, in the form of wandering samurai and vicious bandits, comes directly to a tiny, stationary farming village. And this village acts like a pressure cooker. It becomes a complete microcosm of the entire world.
Because the Crucible here is stationary, the transformation is dictated entirely by a character's specific stage of life. We see this play out through three distinct archetypes. First, you've got Campbell, the elder mentor. He's already had his adventures, he knows war is tragic, his transformation is just finding a worthy cause to protect in his twilight years. Then there's Katsushiro, the eager youth looking for the romance of samurai life. His abyss is crashing into the exhausting, muddy reality of war and this uncrossable class divide. And finally, Kikuchiyo. He's the liminal figure, a peasant pretending to be a samurai. The village forces him to confront his own profound self-hatred so he can finally defend the very farmers who represent his shameful past.
Next up, Section 4, the feminine social journey.
Here, we are fundamentally shifting the battlefield. We're leaving the harsh oceans and the muddy villages behind, and we are stepping directly into the ballroom and the castle. And this brilliantly illustrates a key difference. The classical masculine journey, for instance, relies heavily on physical combat, endurance, and explicit defiance. But on the flip side, the traditional feminine heroine journey is often about navigating a really complex social and relational world. It requires a totally different arsenal: emotional intelligence, intuition, charm, and fierce boundary setting. Think of it as the ultimate mastery of networking and soft power.
Take Cinderella, for example. This is fundamentally a story about social survival and class mobility. She's trapped in the ashes, the ultimate low-status abyss, until her supernatural mentor provides magic. But notice that the magic manifests specifically as courtly fashion. Her gown and carriage are literal social armor, completely required to infiltrate the highest echelons of society. And that famous midnight deadline? It teaches her a harsh reality. Magic and beauty are fleeting. She has to use her charm and decorum to secure her future before the illusion drops. Ultimately, the glass slipper proves that her true nobility is inherent, which allows her to transcend her oppressive environment.
Then we have Beauty and the Beast, where the dynamic shifts yet again. Here, the monster isn't slain with a sword. He is civilized. The beast represents raw, untamed, potentially destructive masculine power. When Beauty is thrust into this castle, her main weapon is her incredibly high emotional intelligence. She uses empathy, shared vulnerability, and strict boundary setting, specifically refusing to marry him night after night. She acts as this refining fire. Her whole journey is about integrating that raw power with civilized humanity to forge a balanced, harmonious union.
Which brings us to our final section, number 5, the unifying human truth.
When we map these journeys out side by side, we see some really clear differences in the primary realms, the methods of victory, and how the monsters are handled. But here's the thing. Whether you're a Greek king having to hold back his wrath in a beggar's cloak, or a young girl navigating the intense social pressure of a royal ball before the clock strikes 12, the mechanics change, but the core goal is exactly the same. Both are undergoing a profound internal transformation in order to secure their respective boons and restore harmony to their worlds. And sometimes that harmony doesn't look like a glowing golden cup or a fancy royal wedding. As Campbell famously realizes at the end of Seven Samurai, while watching the peasants sing and plant rice, in the end, we lost. The farmers are the victors. It's such a powerful moment because sometimes the ultimate boon isn't a magical prize or a glorious triumph at all. Sometimes it is merely the quiet, peaceful continuation of ordinary, harmonious life.
Ultimately, all of these stories tell us that the foundational human requirement is adaptation. We absolutely must transform to survive the crucibles we face. So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want you to think about your own path for just a second. Look at your own life, your own challenges, your own environment. Which of these archetypical journeys best mirrors the ordeal you are navigating right now? Are you stripping away ego, learning to ask empathetic questions, holding your ground in a stationary crucible? Or maybe you're mastering your social armor? Something to think about. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today, and as always, keep learning.